Welcome back to part two of Unite Planet, where we're talking to Colin Skevington, director and writer of the Lossen. So, Colin, part two, we've got a lot more to discuss because you've got lots more films to make, I understand. So, you already got part two and part three of the Lossen kind of scheduled up or in the planning stages?
Yeah, very much so. I'd always known that I was going to do three of, and in fact, the first film ends up with a new story. There's a something that happens at the end of the film, which effectively leads you into a new story. So I've already written the second and third scripts, and the second script effectively carries on directly from the first one, and it's a kind of a different story. It still has the same kind of format. It's basically the Reaper and the Lossen as a character and the Lossen's assistant. Almost like they're like soul collectors, really.
Mhm.
So they go on a different journey, and in the second one, some of that story would take place in India. So it's quite an ambitious story. Some of it would be set in the UK and some of it in India. And then it follows on with a third story, which would all be set in the UK. So we're kind of in a place really where the first film is a lot of people want to see it, and we can talk about that because we've got an opportunity coming up very soon for people to be able to watch it. But so we're looking at how can we go forward with the other two films, and do we release them all together, or do we release the first one and then go with the second and third? So we're kind of looking at that and how we take it forward. So we're kind of looking to have meetings with various people. We've got to raise the funding to make the next two films, and yeah, see where we go from there, really. But it's
So,
it's exciting.
with the COVID-19 thing kicking
Yeah,
off left, right, and centre, it's obviously
yeah,
put the stops on lots of film production and lots of
yes,
business and everything
yeah.
like that. I mean, presumably you would have been having these discussions back at the beginning of the year and everything, and things have been
Well,
pulled from under you, or
no, in a way, probably not, because I wrote the second one in November last year, and I wrote the third one in July. So I
right?
wrote it during lockdown and or whenever lockdown finished. I can't remember, but during that period. So in a way, it's kind of like I wouldn't have had both the scripts finished. So we effectively now we do. So in a way, we can start looking at how we go forward with those projects. But in terms of filming them, there wouldn't be any filming till next year. So, but there in those casts, and some characters will be coming back into the second and the third film. And of course, the third film takes the story full circle. So it's kind of all interlinked, and there's more revelations. I think the thing with the film is that there's lots of twists and turns in it. So very few people. I think only two people have actually guessed the ending of the Lossen, and most people have said they never in a million years saw the ending that was coming, and I'm really pleased about that, which is why I don't want to get any spoilers
Mm,
out. But
mm.
so in a way, and also now the audience that have seen it, and that once people start to see the first one, they'll know the format. So basically, I've kind of got to outwit the audience and keep them second guessing, really. So that's been a bit of a challenge. But I think from the feedback I've got from the scripts, I think I've been able to do that. So that's good news. So
How did you come up with the name, the Lossen? Where did that come from?
the Lawson was interesting because it at the end of the film, there's actually a dictionary definition. A page flips over and you see what a Lawson is. So I'm not going to reveal it because it's a lot of people ask us what a Lawson is, and but basically it just came out of almost doodling. I was doodling and I'd got words in my head, and and it came out of that. So effectively, it was almost like a doodle. So I kind of basically made it up, and but I've had a lot of people say to me it sounds like a mythical kind of creature. So it's whatever people want it to be, but there is actually you get a true definition of a Lawson, and of course
Mm.
the Lawson as a character continues into the next film and the following film. So, but in a potentially in a different form. So that's going to be an intriguing part of it.
Mm. Have you ever been to India before?
I've never been to India, no,
Oh,
absolutely.
crikey.
So
Okay. Well,
it's
good
going to be a
luck.
bit of a shock in a way because
Good
I've never
luck.
been, and
I've been twice,
I've
so
always wanted to go.
I've never tried to make a film there, but
No,
certainly, yeah, my girlfriend and I went there back in 2016, I think, or 17, And then 2018, I think, she actually went out there for dental treatment, would you believe? Because
okay, right, yeah.
It's cheaper out there.
yeah. So she had toenails clipped, and they said, "We'll do the molars on the end of those as well." So no, what happened? Yeah, it basically is cheaper, and she had all her mercury fillings drilled out safely.
Okay, amazing.
They were charged 10 times as much in this country.
Of course, yeah.
And so basically, you can afford to go out there for a little mini holiday. And every other day we were getting carted off in one of these tuk-tuks, or what do they call them, the rickshaws, to this dentist who very nice chap, spoke great English and everything like that, and it all went according to plan. And
what did they replace the mercury with, like white fillings or something, or what?
I think so. I didn't
like a ceramic, are they, or something?
I just sat out in the waiting room listening to the Paranormal UK radio on my phone, which was very nice.
Not listening to the screams then.
No, that blocked it out nicely. But yeah, you have to take your shoes off when you go up there. I suppose they want to check your teeth as you go through the door. So yeah, you sit there. It's actually a nicely air conditioned room, but as soon as you sit outside, my God, it's hot. So yeah, it's an interesting country. The thing that surprised me is that we've been told about beggars, and we were followed by beggars, literally to the point where you kind of sit back in your tuk-tuk, you're about to pull away, or the guy who's the driver is about to pull away, and this hand comes straight in front of you, and it's a beggar, literally comes in front of you into the vehicle, and the guy's saying in England, get out, bugger off, or whatever he's saying to them. And also, it's comical as well, because the tuk-tuk driver, he stays with you all day, and he says basically, I'll meet you here at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You have the whole day, and you pay him something like might be 20 quid for the whole day, And so the trouble is, all these other rickshaw drivers want to get your business as well. And so they see a tourist like us walking along the street, white people, and they go waving to us, oh, they're pointing to their car, hey, And the trouble is, I saw I thought it was our driver, because he looked the same, dark hair, moustache, and he was waving to me. And it was about that time, and he was on the other side of the road. I thought, I couldn't get past. So I'm waving back to him. I go, yeah, put my thumbs up, right, I'm going to cross over. Yeah, I'll be over there. Then I realised I could see our other main driver waving to me down our side of the road. I thought, oh, crikey. And I said, that guy looks exactly like you, It could be his long lost brother, but they all wear the same brown shirts as well, you see. So it does look a bit awkward.
That's funny.
But also, as well as the beggars, when you go into nice plush, sorry about that, dismiss that. My alarm going off for some reason. Also, it goes into a nice plush, shopping centre where they got security guards and everything like that. And then you come out of it, and these two girls who are very well dressed people, like they've just come out of school with their little rucksacks, they're very well dressed, what I would say middle class Indians. They're coming up to you and they say, "Please, can we have some money?" And we go,
"Oh, yes,
a minute." Yeah, you guys don't need the money, and we were actually trying to cross a really busy road, so we just said, pay off, but it really gets frustrating. Everyone's asking you for money, everyone.
Yeah.
So little tips there to watch out for when you go to India.
Oh, well,
absolutely. You can give the money to them if you want. That's completely up to you.
Yeah.
But I think that once you start feeding it, all the other birds will start to land in the square as well, and you end up with too many pigeons.
Yeah. I think it's going to be an interesting challenge, because some of the cast will have to be from India. Some of the cast we'd take, so you'd take a kind of your key crew from here, and then you'd probably have to use some crew in India. So that's going to be an interesting challenge. But the plan, the way it's planning out, because of the nature of the two scripts, we may shoot the third film first and then the second film last. So that may be the way we do it. So it's going to be an interesting challenge. And I always think that the first Lossen it's an ambitious film, and I just think for me, I've always wanted to kind of push boundaries or push go beyond what would be easy, and it was difficult shoot. We had a lot of night shoots, so we were shooting right the way through the night, and it was in March. It was freezing cold. So we were out all night, mostly out exterior. We did one in night shoot as an interior, but most of it was out at night. So it was freezing cold. And, Linda Marlowe plays Sylvia. She's in silk pajamas and a dressing gown. And we had to keep her, she had thermals on underneath, but we had to keep her loaded up with coats and blankets and hot water bottles, and then she'd stay inside until we were ready to shoot, and we'd set it all up. Then she'd come out, and she'd have to take all these layers off, and she was amazing actually. And so was Sean. At one point, I remember seeing some of the takes. Their jaws actually felt like they were freezing up, and they couldn't get the words out. So we had to stop it for a while and give them a hot drink, and so it was kind of a fascinating time. But there were a lot of visual effects in it as well, which actually made it challenging, because I've never really done a film with so many visual effects. And so we were doing the things that we were shooting, we didn't know what it would look like. So we were shooting it thinking, yeah, we've got the elements to do what we need to do, but we have no idea what they're going to be looking at, because you see portals opening up, and so we had to shoot that on a green screen, and we had to do all kinds of things really that made it quite challenging. I remember one thing, the house where we shot the exteriors had this wisteria growing out the front of the house, and we shot that in the March, so there were no leaves or anything. Then when it came to do the pickup, we did a night of pickup shots where we basically, once you've done the edit, if you see any gaps, you do a pickup day. So we went back and did those extra shots, and of course the wisteria was still out and all the leaves, and we couldn't trim it down because the owners were quite they're quite worried that it might not come back. So we had to paint out all the leaves. So we took images of the stone wall, and then we had to put that all over the wall. So all that kind of stuff had to go on. And of course, in a million years, you'll never notice it. There were things like shadows going across of lighting, flashing across the road. So they were painted out. And so there's all kinds of stuff that went on behind the scenes that, to make the quality of the film high in standard, that you'd never think. We had a one beautiful shot going into a room that was set in the 80s, and there's a coffee table they brought in, but unfortunately the end of the table was scratched, and I just said we didn't notice it when we were shooting it because it was so full on, and I said she'd never have that in her house because she's got money. So what we did is we photographed some wood, and the visual effects guy put it on the end of the coffee table, and it's in a tracking shot, and she walks in front of it. So it all had to be tracked, and her shadow was put over it, and you'd never in a million years know it was a visual effect. But there were things like that unfortunately, when you've got the size crew you'd like, you kind of do a bit of patching up in post-production. So, but hopefully I don't think anyone's noticed it, so they might look for it now.
I certainly didn't. I'm sure you did.
No, good.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the vortexes and things, and I thought, that looks. I'm wondering if that's done in After Effects or something like that. But
yes, it was.
It probably was. Done, I've done a course in After Effects, so
amazing.
I couldn't show you how to do it now because I haven't done it for ages, but it's always the first go-to tool for special effects, isn't it?
Yeah.
After Effects by Adobe. Yeah.
There's the guy who did the visual effects a young guy called Dave Novis. He's a really talented visual effects artist, and he's been working on Black Mirror, and he worked on Cats, and he's worked on some quite big stuff now. But there were about 70 layers to the portals, so I mean it was an incredible amount of work that went on. But so it was intense, but he did an amazing job, and we had other artists working with us too, Pratik and Marjolaine. So it was good. Good team.
Andy would understand layers because Andy and I also use Photoshop a lot. So
okay, yeah.
Think Andy, because it's made by Adobe,
yes.
After Effects, so they use layers, and we obviously use layers in Photoshop.
Okay.
Yeah,
but their ones obviously because they're moving. I always kind of like wonder. I mean, it's just me being crazy, but it takes me so long just to create like a visual image for like just a flat visual image. And you look at movies and like how much like memory it would take up and saving it, and kind of like
incredible.
It's just mind blowing.
It's amazing actually, because when we produce you have a cinema version of the film, so it's on a drive. So when we screened it a few times in a Cineworld, and they were brilliant actually. But they took me up into the projection, and it's basically a long corridor of servers, and you just plug the film in, they download it onto the server, and it's just programmed in. But the actual film, when we output it for the post production in London to make the Cinema Master, the final film was something like 300 gigabytes. So it was, you know, it's a massive amount. But the visual effects, they're incredible. There is one character in the film, which I can't say who it is, but one character, we actually changed their eye color to match another character's eye color. So and it's fascinating to see that. So you pick a color out and you track the eyes, and they can change the eye color. You'd never in a million years notice it. And but yeah, it's wonderful. When people say the camera never lies, and I always say to people that's the first lie.
Yeah,
It
yeah. I mean,
completely lies.
as soon as they invented cameras, they started lying with them. But that's what gave birth to the film industry, really,
absolutely,
in a sense.
And
who is your?
Sorry.
I was going to say, who is your influence in the sense of filmmaking? Who have you kind of looked up to and thought, yeah, I really like that film and want to kind of copy his style or her style or something?
Well, I suppose in terms of I mean, not so necessarily copying it, but I've always liked Stanley Kubrick's work.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously a lot of people do, but I just find it so multi-layered, and I just find it fascinating. You know, that you can look at his film and you can see layer after layer in there, and that to me is true filmmaking. And they always say the best way to see if it's a good film is you can watch it with the sound turned down, and if you can get the story with the sound turned down, then and I think his films are just stunning, visually stunning, but amazing. But I remember actually, I went on the set of The Shining. Elstree Studios. My cousin was working on a production there. I can't remember what he was working on, but he was designing scaffolding supports for the sets. And I remember going on the set of the hotel, the exterior. So it was all in Boreham Wood, and basically it was just a massive set, and you could come in through the back. They'd built some of the interiors behind it, so you could actually. So when they did the long shots going through and switching on the lights going out to the maze, that was all built behind it, and they'd actually built some of the maze outside. So they'd put hedges outside, sprayed it all with polystyrene, and then we went on. So they weren't shooting when we were there, but that was when the shooting was going on. But we went on the set of The Empire Strikes Back as well, and they were just building the ice planet with the and they got the Millennium Falcon in there, and they got it on hydraulics going up and down, and so it's kind of fascinating seeing all that as well. But I've always I just like films that have some depth to it and make you think. And so one of my favorite films is Doctor Strangelove, because I just think it's so tongue in cheek, but it's so real. I think there's a real madness to it, and I think he knew a lot about what was going on. I think Stanley,
because he started as a photographer, I understood.
Yeah, he did
before he became a filmmaker. Yeah,
absolutely.
So he knew his cameras pretty well, didn't he?
And I absolutely, and I think the thing with him is that he could shoot as well, and I think he shot some of the material in The Shining. But he knew about lenses, and talking about, we're talking about the camera never lies. It's really about lens choice is very important. I always say to people if they come on a set and they've never seen it, I said, it's not what's going on around you, it's what you're seeing through the lens. That's the whole important thing. And and where you place the camera is very important. It's you don't just plonk it anywhere. It's about what are you trying to convey through the image.
Are you into the Mandela effect, Colin? Have you heard of the Mandela effect?
I have heard about it. Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
There's a shining Mandela effect. So tell me what you think. You guys remember? Because I watched The Shining. Obviously, I've seen it before, yes. But over lockdown, I saw it. It was on TV. When was it? About 3 months ago, something like that. And the end scene in the maze where Jack is frozen.
Yes.
From my memory, I remember him shivering violently.
Okay.
Shivering violently, but no. Apparently, in this reality, it's just a freeze frame of him just rock solid frozen.
Well, that's interesting, because that's how I don't remember him shivering. I don't think I've ever remembered that. Actually, I always remember him being solid. It's like he's frozen. and that's interesting.
What about you, Neil? What do you remember?
Well, to be honest, I can't remember much about the film. I have seen it on VHS tape. God knows, about 30 plus years ago when it first came out, and
Here's Johnny.
I just can't remember much about the film at all. So it's no
Must
good
watch
asking me
it
about the
again.
Mandela effect. But if the fact you just see him as a frozen statue, maybe they nicked Han Solo from The Empire Strikes Back in his carbonite form and just stuck him
Right.
there.
It's not a
Put a Jack
statue. It's
Nicholson
literally
mask on him or
it's
something.
him with icicles on it. So
Yeah.
he's not a statue. It's just him frozen.
They've
But
done a remake, but not a remake. They've done a sequel with
sequel of
Ewan
it,
McGregor, is it?
yeah.
Playing the son who was going around on
Yes,
a tricycle.
yeah.
I haven't heard much about it, but I just remember seeing it on bus stop signs and things.
I've not seen the film, but I saw it behind the scenes, and they actually rebuilt the set of inside the Overlook Hotel. They actually rebuilt it, and they used the guy that played that was in Henry Thomas, that was in E.T.
Oh yeah,
plays Jack Torrance. So he plays the Jack Nicholson's character in those flashback scenes, which is kind of interesting.
I noticed they got the carpet slightly wrong in the new film.
Okay.
Only slightly.
Okay.
It wasn't 100%, but it was a pretty damn good shot of it.
Yeah. Amazing.
Now, interesting about a friend of mine I used to work with many years ago in a film charity company for the forces. He used to work at Denham Film Laboratories, and he said that I think this is like really when 2001 came out. He said that Stanley Kubrick came into Rank Film Laboratories, into their preview theatre, and he would not release any prints of 2001 until he had personally seen every single one and okayed them for colour and everything,
Yeah.
So I don't know how many prints they make of that film, but he had to watch every single one, beginning through the end. It wasn't just quick, oh yeah, that's fine, next one. He watched every, whatever 2 hours long the film is.
Yeah.
He must have spent like a month there or something,
I never really, that's incredible. I mean, that's an amazing insight. I mean, he was a perfectionist, and I know people, because I think when he did Eyes Wide Shut, I'm trying to think, was it Harvey Keitel or somebody? I can't remember who it was, but there was an actor who was playing a particular character, and he left the production in the end because he just couldn't take it, because he was asking him to do so many takes and he couldn't give him any more, so he left. And but it's kind of interesting. I'm not comparing myself to Stanley Kubrick, but I know exactly how he feels, in the sense that when you make a film and you see it at the highest quality, and then you suddenly, when it was at Cineworld, I asked them, could we have a look at it, and they put it on, and nowadays you can adjust the projector, because it's all digital, whereas with film it's all about how you made the print, so the prints can be very different from print to print. So I can understand that. So they adjusted and then I went away and I kept thinking, it's not right. And I phoned them. I said, can I come and look at it again? This is like 2 days before we were having the screening. So they're very gracious, and I went back and they made some more adjustments, and it was better. And I wasn't happy because the green exit lights were reflecting onto the screen, and I'm
ruined your production,
thinking, no. And I think it's just that particular cinema at that time. But we had a screening at Molyneux, which is a big post-production house in London.
I know.
They did the color grading for the Lossen. They were brilliant, and they did the King's Speech, and they do the Crown. They do really big productions. So they did an amazing job on the color grade, and we did a screening in their preview theater where they grade the movies on a big cinema screen. And they've got all these lovely seats in there. So I went in and I said, can I just have a quick look before we screen it to everyone? And they said, so they put it on, and I was just blown away. And the sound was wonderful. And I thought, well, this is the place where we color grade it. So it's just going to be. And I remember saying to everyone when they came, I said, we are absolutely spoiled now, because you'll never see it as good as this. It just looks stunning. And so it can look different. When I sit, if I was in everyone's homes while they were watching the Lossen, I'd be I want to be adjusting their TV or changing the sound. Or can I do, and it's best that I don't go anywhere near it. Really.
Yeah. So with the next film then,
yes.
I mean, is there a bigger budget you're hoping for? I mean, I don't know how you raise the money for the first one. I presume it's a considerable amount to cover that.
Yeah, I mean it was a reason. I mean it's a reasonable amount of money. We had about just under £40,000 to make the first one, which is quite a lot on one sense, but it's not really in the bigger picture. And but I didn't get paid. I've worked a long time on this film, and that's fine because it's all about making the film for me. And there were other people most of the crew were paid, and the actors were paid, and it was all done. So it was expensive, and but the next one, I think we need to up the budget so that we can, especially because we're going to India. But I think we need a bigger budget for it. So, but I hope people will see the potential of it. I think they will. And
You might know a friend of mine actually, Colin. Do you know Emma Dark at all?
that
Uh,
name's very familiar. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, she does short films as well, and
Mm,
she's more kind of the horror genre. So
okay,
she's made Salient -10, I think is her
okay. I've heard
recent
her
one.
name before. Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah,
just thought
yeah.
you sound like the kind of person that would be connected with her actually, and
Okay,
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, and but I think going forward, we just need to go forward with those stories, and yeah. But what we're doing now is we're going to do a pay-per-view of the Lossen,
Mm.
because we thought, how are we going to get it? Because there's so many people say, well, we've had lots of screenings at festivals, and we've done some screenings in some Cineworlds, and there's so many people want to see it. So we thought, well, let's rather than do a blanket release to start, let's do a pay-per-view. So we're at the end of October. We're planning for the last week of October, going into Halloween. So I think you'll be able to watch it up and that week up until the 1st of November. So basically, you can buy a ticket. We don't know how much it will be, but it's not going to be expensive. But you can buy a ticket, and basically you'll get access to watch it during that week. So
How do people find out about that? How do they go to the Lossen website? Or?
yes, they can. So they can go to www.thelossen.com. So it's LOSSEN.com, and all the information is there. I think the player will actually be on the website as well, so you'll be able to access it through the Lawson website, or you'll be able to access it through a link. So I think you'll get the link when you buy the ticket. So it's a great way of doing that, and we're also hopefully planning to do a live Q&A on Facebook on Halloween, so people can ask questions about the film, and so hopefully that will broaden the reach of the film initially, and we'll see what kind of response we get. So fingers crossed with that. Yeah.
So would it be people ask the actors that took part in the film a Q&A on Facebook?
Yeah, we might be able to, if we can technically, we might be able to do it like this. We might be able to get some of the actors to be part of it. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm sure we'll be able to do that. And I think people are interested in the story behind the film and how we made it. And
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 when you do this sort of thing, and you submit it to these film festivals like in America and
yeah.
wherever, how do you do that? I mean, someone says, look, the only way you're going to get this film seen is put it through a film festival. A lot of people see it, then deals are made. Is that the procedure?
Yeah, well, what you do is basically there's a website called Film Freeway, and you just join that. You set the film up as a project on there, and you put a preview copy up, which is only available to festival directors and people who will review the film. So that's on there. You can put all kinds of information up, photo stills from the film, and then effectively you pay a fee to enter the film. So and then you wait to see if they've selected you or not. So but we of all the festivals we entered, we had a 50% acceptance rate, which I think from people have told me is actually is pretty high. So and in fact one day I had this idea. I'd entered a festival in two festivals in New Mexico, and I had this idea in my head that no, one in Utah and two in New Mexico. And I had this idea that I was going to go to all three festivals. And my aunt lives in Las Vegas, and I thought I'm going to go to Las Vegas and then go to Utah, and then across to New Mexico. I had this idea of going in a triangle to see three festivals. And then we were accepted in the Utah one. It's called Film Quest, which is it's a very successful genre festival, and it's quite tough to get into from what I've heard from people. So we were nominated for 2 awards there. We didn't win anything, but then the 2 festivals in New Mexico, one we were rejected from. So I thought, oh well, my 3 festivals are not going to happen. So suddenly I had this thought. There's this festival in Las Vegas that keeps popping up, and I thought I'm just going to enter this festival. So I entered it, and they said yes. So ironically, I did get the 3 festivals, but one ended up being in Las Vegas. It's almost like a premonition that I knew I was going to go to 3 festivals,
Mm.
and I drove 1,600 miles in
Wow.
6 days, I think it was,
Wow.
to these festivals. Yeah,
That's heart and soul work, isn't it?
it really is. And I was
Yeah.
driving through the desert in New Mexico. It was just quite incredible, really. So, but I was on my own as well. So it was quite an
Really?
experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you go anywhere near Roswell, as it's New Mexico?
No, I've never been to the to Roswell. Yeah.
What is your thoughts on, whilst we've got you here, what's your thoughts on UFOs and things like that?
Well, I've always, ever since as a child, I've always believed in extraterrestrials. I've never ever doubted it, and I've always felt, why would we think we're the only beings in this great universe? And I always remember there were Jerry Anderson. I was a big fan of Jerry Anderson shows, and I used to watch UFO, and that I always thought that was a fascinating story of these aliens coming to harvest organs so that they could keep themselves alive. I thought it was quite an interesting idea, and so I've always believed in extraterrestrials. I personally do believe that we have been influenced by extraterrestrials, and I think when you look at I mean, Ancient Aliens, I know that's a big series and I've watched some of that, but when you look at the Nazca lines in Peru, and there are certain things that, I mean, also in the Bible, I always say to people, read is the first chapter of Ezekiel.
Oh, with the ships.
Yes, and to me, they talk about a wheel within a wheel, and to me, that's anti-gravity. And I think it's there, and I just think, look at the possibilities. Just because we don't see it in the form we think it's in, it doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist. And I just think we need to be to be open to the possibilities of things, and maybe things be revealed. I also think there's a line people say is, I'll believe it when I see it, and I think it's the other way around. You'll see it when you believe it, because I do believe it's about everything is about consciousness. So as you raise your consciousness, and I was going to say this about storytelling, and I forgot to mention this. I always use the example of the bad guy. If you say to an actor, right, I'd like you to play the bad guy, a good actor never ever says, I'm playing the bad guy, because the bad guy never believes they're bad. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. People who are bad don't actually believe it. So that's the concept, so you might see people doing all kinds of terrible things, and if you look at it from your own moral compass, of course you'd never do that. But from their perspective, they don't sit there and think, oh, this is bad, because if they thought that, they wouldn't do it. So in terms of a character, when you think of actors, to be, acting is all about being truthful. So a good actor plays the part to its ultimate truth. So that means they're not playing the bad guy. And I always remember seeing behind the scenes of Meryl Streep playing the mother in Manchurian Candidate. I don't know if you've ever seen the remake. She's absolutely incredible, and she talks about it. She never ever said, I don't see her as the bad guy, and she explained why this mother thought she was doing the best for her son and for the people, and that was her view of what she thought she was doing. So I think that's quite an important thing to know, is that don't we people who we perceive as bad, they don't think that themselves.
So subjective, isn't it? I suppose
it is totally subjective. Yeah,
I can back you up on the whole kind of you create your own reality thing.
Yeah.
In that, have you heard of the Ancient Ram Inn in Gloucestershire?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, so this is a very, very old pub, very old inn. It's got a history of witchcraft and devil worship, and it's like a really energetically very, very negative place, hugely haunted. And this is a place where there were some doctors and nurses that did a sleepover, like for a charity thing to raise money, you know, haunted house sleepover. They were so scared by it. They were kind of like they didn't last the night and just fled, basically.
Wow.
However, I know a guy who's on the kind of like the London paranormal network, basically, who's a skeptic. He's a complete skeptic. He's a nice guy, Scottish chap. And he did an overnight thing in the ancient Ram Inn. I don't know how he got in, because it's very difficult to actually get a place there. But maybe he was doing a book on it or something, because I know he writes books on paranormal stuff. But he said it was, quote, one of the best sleeps he's ever had.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, really? This is a place with devil worship? This is a place where people have seen dark shadows, where they've been kind of like prodded and poked and got scratch marks on them, and he has the best sleep of his life in there. It's just,
maybe likes getting scratched.
Yeah. But that's really interesting, because as you were saying that, I remember watching an Oprah Winfrey show years back, and she did this experiment, and this is always stuck in my mind. They brought the audience into a kind of holding area where they were waiting before they went in the studio, and they said, we're going to do an experiment today. We're just going to put a smell into the room, and we want you to tell us what you think the smell is. So because we're interested in see, you know, what people think it is. So anyway, so suddenly this smell comes in, and some people are going, oh, you know, it smells of something sweet or whatever. Other people were literally going to the toilets and throwing up because they felt so sick.
Yeah.
So they eventually got through all this, and they went into the studio, and they said, we didn't put a smell into the room.
Oh, wow.
And that really kind of blew me away, because in a way it is your perception, you know, in a way. So, you know, I thought that was
the theme of the show. Was it like a psychology theme?
I think it was. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it was. But it was kind of, it's showing that, and this is why with film and television, you know, the juxtaposition in editing. So I was, there's a quote from Alfred Hitchcock, who's I've always been a big fan of his work as well. His work fascinates me. But he said about editing. He said, if I take an image of a man, an old man, smiling, and I then edit next to that a shot of a little girl, he's a grandfather figure. But he said, if I then take the shot of the girl out and I put an attractive woman in a bikini, he said he's like then a dirty old man.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed with the image of the old man. It's exactly the same image, but it's what's put next to it. And that's how, you know, film is just the most powerful medium. And I think people don't understand, and I think it's the same with television, you know, with news and everything, is that you know, you've got to be aware that what you're seeing may not be what you perceive to be a truth.
Don't get us talking about the news. I've got some rather sour grapes with what's going on in the mainstream news at the moment.
Yeah, I think we've got to learn to be more discerning.
Yes.
And we've got to learn to ask questions.
Yes.
And just not take everything on face value. And I think with all the stuff we've been talking about, you know, some people might listen to this and think, oh, you know, it's rubbish, or it's not. And I would just say, well, as I said before, just explore it. Don't damn it. At least explore it. And then it's like, you know, we're talking about astrology, you know, I've had some interesting experiences through astrology, and but I think astrology is fascinating. If you go to a really good astrologer, you can get a real insight into who you are through astrology. But it's not the astrology people see in the newspapers was actually started by a journalist in America. They had to find some way of, you know, getting sales up, and they knew that people were interested in that, and so they just did this limited sun sign thing, which really doesn't give you anything, because you can't plonk everyone into 12 star signs. It just doesn't work like that.
But apparently there's 13 anyway. There's a hidden one.
So they say. But here's another interesting thing. I know somebody who's an astrologer she's married to a doctor. And she actually said to me, interestingly, that the original Hippocratic Oath said in order to be a doctor, you must also be an astrologer.
Oh wow.
Through
When,
astrology, you actually get an insight into the
mm.
likely ailments of the person.
When
So
would this have been? When the
I
1700s, 1600s?
know
Oh, that was like in ancient Greece, wasn't it?
yeah,
Oh, that far.
Hippocrates, yeah.
Mm.
taking
Um,
way back.
but
Mm.
but Isaac Newton was also into astrology as well as being,
Yeah.
the grandfather of physics and stuff.
Yep.
He had studied it, and people sort of said, "Oh, you idiot! What are you doing that?" He says, "Sir, I have studied it. You have not," or something. It was a famous.
Yeah, and
Quote.
it's interesting, and that's why when people are arrogant, I think it's really arrogant to to throw something out without actually exploring it, and especially if you're a scientist, because to me, true science is about investigating, and I think a real scientist explores
Mm.
and discovers through exploration. They don't discover by just slamming an idea, and I think people need to be more open-minded about it.
When you
Hmm.
had your Australian reading and it was an astrological one, she picked up some quite specific things that seemed to me to be more kind of clairvoyant mediumship based. So was it specifically astrological thing where she had nothing clairvoyant, or did she incorporate clairvoyance with it?
I don't think she is clairvoyant, from as I understand it. I mean,
Mm.
it was actually in the UK. It was actually in London.
Oh, was it? Oh.
And, yeah, and yeah, I don't think she's clairvoyant, but yeah, she just said some. It was interesting how she knew the year that I'd gone to Australia.
Mm.
So, and she did explain where that was in the chart, but there are certain things like I'm a Virgo, and you have a rising sign, which is the point where the horizon is at the moment you're born. And I'm actually a double Virgo, and one of my things is perfectionism, and I've actually had to learn to stop being such of a perfectionist, because
Yeah.
sometimes the things in your chart are things that they might be deemed to be negative, but they're your lessons, they're the things you've got to overcome. So when people said, they said to me, I was still working on the Lossen, they say, are you being a perfectionist? I said, no, actually, I'm trying to finish it to a standard.
Mm.
But and I don't do it. I said, actually, I could point out all the things that are not perfect for me, so it's definitely not perfect, but I'm not going to do it. But yeah.
George Lucas had the same thing about Star Wars, though. He was only
Mm,
40% happy with it, and so that's why
mm,
he went back
40%.
20. Yeah,
mm,
yeah, 25 years later, he went back digitally and put in extra things and
mm,
cleaned up things and stuff.
mm,
He screwed up Phantom Menace, so
Oh yeah, I know that. But he decided, now that they got computers that could do stuff digitally, paint things in, he
mm,
decided to
mm,
go
and he made
back
it
and
worse.
restore the print, make it nice and shiny again, but also do corrections. He added in extra X-wing fighters. He removed all the blue edging on the blue screen work around the X-wing fighters, which they used
mm.
blue screen then rather than green screen. So he cleaned up. He did improve it to a certain extent, but he just, I
Mm.
think, perhaps threw too much in because he had new
I think
tools.
he went over the top with putting extra
Yeah.
stuff in, and when you look at, you can actually, there's videos online, but you can look at the comparison, and I think it's like you've got to know when to stop. I mean, I'm
Mm.
sure you know this as an artist, Neil, is
Mm.
that you have to know when to step back, and yeah, and I think it's an intuitive thing in a way. Um, I when I see something and I that's it, I know, and then we move on. And but if it's not right, I just think, but like Stanley Kubrick would do something like 60, 70 takes. And I think one actor, he said to him, what more do you want me to do? I can't give you any more. And he said, I'll let you know when I see it.
So
But you just, what do you do?
I think that kind of that level of perfection is counterproductive, because the actors will start getting bored, they'll start getting
Yeah,
malaise.
absolutely.
As
It's
you say,
tough.
Harvey Keitel walked. So
Yeah, it's
Mm.
tough, and it's tough for actors. And I think, I really enjoy working with actors, and I admire it's a real gift to really act properly, and to see the process they go through. Because when we shot the Lossen with Sean, Linda, and Albert, who played the three leads in it, their first day was shooting the ending of the film, and they went straight into a really emotional moments, and they just hit it. And we'd done a kind of read through and a rehearsal, and we talked about it, and I'd given them insights and how I would see things. But when it was happening, I thought, these people, they've been through this journey on a personal level, and I can see how they respond. I mean, there's a moment when Linda Marlowe is something is revealed to her, and the way she looks across to another character, her eyes, I just thought she just gets this 100%. You know,
Why did you film the end scene at the very beginning?
because we had 6 days to shoot the film, and we ended up doing 4 night shoots. So we ended up starting with day shoots. So we did exteriors and then an interior, and then we were in a studio in London in Battersea where we needed a white room. So we went into what's called an infinity cove, and it's kind of it's like a curve all the way around you, apart from behind you. And so we shot through the day, and then basically that it's scheduled that we the way it worked out going into London, it was easier to start the way we did with the exteriors at the location, and then do London on the second day. So it was purely to do with day going into night. So then we had almost 24-hour break before we went into the vigorous night scenes. And but I tell you, the weirdest thing being in a white room, because they say this, if you the way to make a human go insane is to put them in a white room, because there's no reference. You have no external reference to yourself in a white room. So they always say if you put a black dot on the wall if you're in a white room, you can actually get an idea. I'm bigger than the dot, and I'm this far away. So you refer to yourself from the external. But if you don't have anything outside yourself, unless you can go inward and find that within yourself, if you externalize all the time, you go mad. And I remember going into the studio, and I remember walking to the back of the studio, and it curves. And as I was going back, it started going like a fog. And I actually had to go like this to think, am I going to hit the wall? Like this is the most amazing thing. For an hour, I actually lost my mind I actually didn't know what we were doing. And there was a lot of work going on setting stuff up. And I thought, I'm going insane. I'm going mad here. And I don't know what I can't think. And I'm usually very sharp. And I said to Hattie, our DP, who's amazing. And I said to her, Hattie, I'm just going to have to tell you, I can't remember what we're doing. I can't. And she said, right, let's sit down. And we sat down and we went through the whole thing. And I thought, yeah, and it gradually came back to me, but it's never happened to me. And I really believe it's because we were in that white room.
It's almost like snow blindness or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it's almost like you're mesmerized by it. So I understand when people say they go into solitary confinement, it's kind of torture in a way. If you were stuck in a white room with nothing in there, that would send you insane unless you can go inward. So if you think about Nelson Mandela being in a jail cell, for all that time, it was probably his inner faith that actually allowed him to get through that.
Now, the white room where you shot is where you talked about earlier. You got some key scenes there, which is presumably kind of an afterlife existence of sorts.
Yeah.
And characters have got to reflect on what they've done in their life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the film, they do go into this white room, which is kind of infinity. So you all you see is white, and in that moment is when the actual dream is revealed to Sylvia, and it's quite shocking to her when she realizes what the dream is and the connection of the whole story to that dream. And so it is in that moment where it's revealed to her, and in a way, watching the film, it does end on a very positive moment, with her. So there's kind of like almost like there is a payoff at the end. And in a way, is that what you get in an afterlife? Is it the afterlife? And and in a way, that's how I see it.
Going off in a slightly crazy direction and a paranormal direction, and I'm going to ask Neil as well. Have you guys heard of actual cases of people seeing Grim Reapers? Because I can say that I've heard of this.
Okay.
Have you come across this?
No, I'll tell you, I mean, before we get to your Green Reapers, I know that there's been studies done by Raymond Moody, who did afterlife near-death experiences, and other people. And I think I forget the guy now. He's a epilepsy guy, but he also studies afterlife stuff as well. And he says that in the Western society where we are, we die, if you like. We go through a tunnel. This is our near-death experience, and we go through a tunnel. But in Japan, when people have died or they had a near-death experience, they find themselves tending to a garden, and that's
How
their little
interesting.
version of
Yeah.
a near-death experience. They're tending to a garden, and then presumably someone comes up and chats to them. I don't know, but
How interesting.
yeah,
Well, I never heard that.
cultural
Yeah.
differences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
And again, it goes back to this thing of like creating your own reality,
yeah,
because maybe there's two things that could be going on. Number one, there's a possibility that this Grim Reaper being actually is a being, and people are seeing it, and it's kind of turned into like a mythology. In the same way we see the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. It's not really real, but maybe perhaps in the past it was. So that's one possibility. Another possibility could be that it is just some kind of entity that does collect souls or does help them to the other side, and because of our own perception of what a Grim Reaper, its role is, we're projecting to ourselves what it looks like, if you see what I mean. It's almost like mirroring back to us what we would expect it to look like.
That's interesting, because interestingly with the film, it starts with the Grim Reaper walking up the path, and it's quite freaky. I mean, we had a stilt walker, and I think she's amazing, Stacey. She's 5'3", I think, but she was
big
we got her
ideas.
up to 8 feet with this thing.
Yeah.
And she looked amazing, and it looked incredible. But people, have seen the trailer, and of course we don't want to give too much away of the story in the trailer, but some people say, oh no, it's not a horror film, and people are quite freaked by the opening of the film. It's very spooky, and I always say to people, don't be freaked by it, because the door's going to open to something else. So it's not what you think it is. But I think it is people projecting. And interestingly, on the poster of the film, which you can see on the website, we have the Grim Reaper on there, the beautiful poster. And I remember showing some people, opened it up, and there were two women, and they both said, that's really beautiful. And then a guy came up just over to see it as well while they were there, and he said, that's freaky. And I thought, how interesting that the two women said it was beautiful, and the guy said it was freaky. And it's kind of like, well, why would they see something that he sees freaky that they think is beautiful? And it is all about our own perception, which is what, to me, is what art is about. It's purely to evoke something within you. And this idea that if you come across angry people in your life, it's really an indication to say, are you angry? Where's your anger coming from? Do you need to heal your anger? Because when you free that, that's why the best thing I think ever said on this planet was Gandhi. If he said it, is be the change you want to see in the world, because you have to be the very thing that you're looking for. And I think Mother Teresa said, supposedly said, somebody asked her, how do we bring about world peace? And she said, go home and make peace with your family, because it's got to start within you. You've got to find the peace. So whatever you're looking for in the world, you've got to find that in yourself, and you've got to get over those hurdles and barriers. And there's a book that I've recommended to a few people recently, by Debbie Ford, and it's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And it's basically, she was a very spiritual person, and she came across experiences that different kinds of people that made her angry. I can't remember I haven't read it for a long time, but it did have an impact. But she basically realized that in order to go on the spiritual journey, she had to access and pay homage to the kind of dark side of herself, and recognize that it was in her too, because we are everything. So you have to, acknowledge it and just let it be and just accept it. And and I think it's there. So I think, as I said before, when we judge people, it's so easy to judge, is that we're projecting the parts of ourselves that we don't like onto others, and that's something we have to pay attention to, I think.
I've got a technical question, actually. I'm on your website at the moment, which is why I'm looking to the side. Comparing the poster with the YouTube clip, or the YouTube still there, I've always wondered this. Is the poster a completely start from scratch re-rendering illustration, or is it photographs with kind of like filters added and manipulations with that? I've always wondered that.
It's the latter. Actually, that is a still from the film. So it's
Yeah.
actually the still you're seeing, because it was shot on very high resolution, a very high imaging camera. We were able to take the image from the film, and then it was Marjolaine Lebrasseur and Pratik Matter. They did the final rendering of the poster, and they did the most. So they put some light into it, and they really did an amazing job on it. So, but and Pratik, he did the design for the Lossen title. So it's
I like the
but,
typeface. What's the spooky typeface?
it's Casablanca Antique.
Casablanca
We'll be using
Antique.
that now.
Okay, yes, there you go. It's a
like
great typeface. I kind of
Yeah.
wanted it to look old and you know,
Yeah.
so
I really like the
but
orbs flying as well, like in the
yeah,
background.
and
Yeah.
they're actually on the poster. They are actually orbs that we used in the visual effects.
Yeah.
So we took those. So I kind of it's interesting because I you know, some people think it's a horror film, and I think that sometimes things are hidden in plain sight. And I would say, you know, because the title, the strapline for the film is "Beneath Every Nightmare Lies a Dream," and it's really saying that, you know, it's not as scary as you think it is. And I always think of the Wizard of Oz. You know, ultimately when the curtains pull back, it's just a man behind there with levers. So the thing we fear the most is not what we think it is, and I think fear stops us from being who we are. So we've got to overcome our fears, and you know, it's tough, but I think we need to. But there's one thing, if you don't mind me just
Sure.
saying that age. I always think people get hung up on age, and that people make judgments of people at a certain age. You know, you get to this age and you're that, and you're, you know, we put people into boxes according to age. And I always think if somebody is not meant to do the thing that they're meant to do until they're 86, then we can't write them off because they're in their 80s. We have to honor that they may be on their journey still to find and do the thing they're meant to do, and it may be just want something very small or whatever. And I don't like the idea of the word retirement. I think people bandy this idea of retiring, you know, and you get people in their 50s saying, right, I'm retiring, and basically what they really want to say is, I hate my job, I can get some money so I don't have to keep doing that every day. So because I think work, there's somebody once said that work is the action of the heart, and I think work in its truest form is a beautiful thing, that we should find our passion, whatever it is, whether it's gardening or anything, and follow that. And I know it's not always easy, so I get that, but I don't like this idea of labeling people with an age. And I always remember somebody saying to me once, "How can I ask you how old you are?" And my mouth just opened, and I said, "How qualified are you to know?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, if I tell you my age, are you going to sit me in this box or that box? And, you know, you're going to make a sort of generalized statement of me or vision of me because of an age?" And I mean, Linda Marlowe, and Linda, no, she'll quite happily say this because she just turned 80 in July. She's the lead in our film. She is currently doing the trapeze for a show that she's going to do in London next year. She did a show called No Fear when she was 62, and she said, I want to redo it when I'm 80. And I saw her recently, and I said, how's the trapeze going? She said, it's going great. And the trapeze artist that's training her said she's very good at it. Linda's somebody who's really out there doing her thing, and that's one. So, you know,
Brilliant.
don't be held back by age.
Brilliant. Okay, well, on that note, we'll have to say thank you very much to you, Colin Skevington, producer, writer, director of the Lossen and other Lossen films to come. We hope.
Yep,
We're looking forward to those
hopefully.
as well. So if you can just give people your website address, Colin, so they could check you out, and also you got your pay-per-view if you want to repeat those details for that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so you can watch the film the last week of October. We're doing a pay-per-view. You can buy a ticket online and it will give you a chance to watch the film online. So if you go to www.thelossen.com, you'll see everything about the film there. You see the trailer and you see where you can get tickets. So and also all the social medias there. So please like the Lossen page on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. So that would be great.
Excellent. We're very, very interesting, and we certainly enjoyed it. Andy and I, we were given a sneak viewing of it, so we won't give any clues away, but we certainly enjoyed it, and
That's
I'd
great.
certainly be interested to see the follow-ups if they come about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Definitely.
Fabulous.
Okay, thank you once again, Colin, and we wish you well with your future
Thanks.
projects. And if you need any travel tips for India, give me a shout.
I will. Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Thanks,
right.
Andy. It's been real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks very much for everyone watching. This is Unite Planet, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
And in the strangest of moments, these unfulfilled dreams will keep hunting you out. Like the wind searching for a tree to twist, they worm their way closer and closer, even through the cracks in the glass.